I am, sorry, I'll do that again. Aloha, dear friends. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This evening's program is going to go something like this. We will be starting with Brett Smith, a musical presentation. We're all very lucky to be able to have Brett in our community because he's world renowned. So the Oakville community gets to have him whenever we want. So we are very lucky to be able to have him perform this evening. And then obviously, dearest Jian will be giving a presentation, and then we will be having a Q&A afterwards. I just want to let the friends know that if you do have any questions, please write them to me in the chat, because we will not be taking fly-by-night questions in the Q&A. The questions have to be written to me in the chat, and they will be then asked of Jian by me through the chat. So please don't raise your hands, just write the question to me in the chat. Thank you very much. And then afterwards, we will be having a short, for those of us who can and wish to stay, we will be having a short devotional praying for our friends, our brothers and sisters in the Ukraine who are going through this horrific time. So I think that at this point, I will be I will be asking Brett to begin his musical presentation. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking, just because we recently had the International Day of the Woman, that it might be nice to recognize one of the many amazing women in the history of the Baha'i faith, and most people will know Tahereh, who was a poetess and who was martyred for her beliefs in the Bab and Baha'u'llah. So this is a song. This is off our very first album. I haven't played this in a long time. It's called Unveiling, and it's that moment, both metaphorically and in reality, when Tahereh removed her veil in front of a lot of men, and it was very troubling to see. But it really was the beginning of the emancipation of womankind. So yeah, this is called The Unveiling. Tear your veil away, drape thyself in the silken vesture of immortality. Unveil your face and manifest the beauty of this day. The hour has come to tell the world and show us this new way. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 the hidden mystery now revealed for every eye to see. Woman's voice will now be heard to bless humanity. The ornament of divine mystery, the sweetness of your name, we honor you, O Tahereh. began to stir the moment you appeared, your radiant face to show the path to womanhood. So raise the call for all to hear, surround us with your love. Reflect a glimpse of his crimson light, oh blessed Tahirih, the ornament of divine mystery, the sweetness of your name. We honor you, O Tahirih, we honor you, O Tahirih. Do, do.
Thank you so much, Brett. Thank you for that. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
So I'd like to introduce a dear friend of mine, Jian Khodadad. It's a real pleasure to be able to introduce him for the second time, not this year, but for the second time. Well, we've been lucky enough to have him speak at our firesides twice, and I've been lucky enough to be able to introduce him both times, and it's a real pleasure to do so. I've known Jian for many years. What's really funny about that is that Jian looks exactly the same as before the many years when I first met him, and I think that part of this presentation should include what his secret is, and how he's managed to stay looking exactly the same. So that's going to be my question to myself in the chat at the end of in the Q&A. So if you please answer that first. But I've known Jian since before he was a very important person. Jian is the corporate manager. Sorry, that is. You're going to have to forgive me because I'm not a good faster, and I do very badly without sleep and without coffee, basically on a drip all day long. So you'll just have to bear with me today. I do apologize. Jian is Vice President of Corporate Development and Strategy at SiriusXM, a leading audio entertainment company in the US and Canada. The fact that I got that wrong just is a testament to how important I think Jian is without that appellation. Such a lovely, lovely person. He's just always been one of my friends that I don't see very often, but whenever I do, he's just always wreathed in smiles, and I love seeing him. Such a kind and wonderful man, and I wish I would see him more often. But Jian will be speaking to us today about spiritual reality, a journey. And I don't know, whoever was here with us the last time Jian did his presentation on the life of Abdu'l-Baha, it was so moving. It was such a touching tribute. And we were all really, it made such an impact on us all. So we're all very much looking forward to the second presentation. So with no further ado, go ahead, Jian. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mariam. I don't deserve the comments you shared at all. And it is wonderful to be back with this community this evening. I'm going to share my slides, but before I do, I think, Mariam, you might want to hit me through Zoom, because I actually have a discussion question for the end of the program for all of us. So it might be more like, instead of like a Q&A to the speaker, it's a question that I hope to just get everybody's insights on, because this is a topic that really fascinates me a lot. And with that, let me share my screen. So if you give me a moment. Can you see my screen? Is it okay? Great.
Yes.
So good evening. It is great to be with everyone tonight. I'm excited to explore this theme of spiritual reality and the role of a divine teacher to educate us. Now, this is a new topic for me. I think I'm going to put my disclaimer here, and which of course it cannot be adequately addressed at all. So I ask you to be patient with me as I'm just at the beginning of developing my understanding. And I want to do a big shout out and thanks to my mom, because my mom always has served as a thought partner for me, and especially on tonight's topic. There is a well-known quote, which many of you probably are familiar with, from French theologian and philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. And he wrote, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Now, what is he telling us? From that moment, we are embryos. And with the first breath we take in this world, that first gasp of air, that first cry, our souls are embarking on a journey. Our bodies are like the vehicles enabling the soul to acquire capacities and grow. Now, we can all understand physical reality. This is the reality that surrounds us. It's material. We can detect this physical reality through our five senses. We can touch it. We can see it. We can hear it. We can smell it. We can taste it. But how do we understand a different type of reality? Let's call it a spiritual reality, that is of our souls and the world of the spirit. We may all feel attuned to something deeper within us. We may feel it very strongly, but how do we understand it if our human senses, our five senses, can't detect it? And this is what we are going to explore tonight. It is often through a teacher that we can understand a reality that is different from the one that we can readily perceive. And we'll discuss how we can think differently about reality and the role of a divine teacher to guide us. Now, we're going to move pretty quickly in the next 30 minutes. And I'm going to start with a relatively basic story. We're going to kind of peel this off in layers in terms of the role of a teacher guiding the student to understand reality. The first layer we are going to look at is that of Helen Keller, who was unable to hear and see. These are two very important senses, but it was through the aid of a teacher that she more fully connected to the reality that surrounded her. We're then going to explore Plato's Allegory of the Cave, which many of you are probably familiar with, as a way of going deeper, of peeling back another layer into this idea of understanding a different type of reality, that in many ways in this allegory of the cave, there are spiritual parallels. And then we'll dive more deeply in understanding spiritual reality and Baha'u'llah as the divine teacher, helping us understand the nature of the soul, its purpose, and related themes. And we're going to do this by directly looking at the Baha'i writings. And then I'll have some concluding remarks, and we will then go into a discussion question, which really requires all of us and will hopefully spur some good conversation. So let's get started. From a young age, I don't necessarily know why, but I was fascinated and inspired by Helen Keller. Well, actually, I do know why, and we'll go into it. The well-known American writer, Mark Twain, wrote, "The two greatest characters in the 19th century are Napoleon and Helen Keller. Napoleon tried to conquer the world by physical force and failed. Helen Keller tried to conquer the world by power of mind and succeeded." Growing up, I was attracted to her story. Many of you are familiar with Helen Keller. She was a well-known American author, lecturer, and activist. She was born in Alabama and in 1880, and at the age of 19 months, Helen Keller developed a severe illness, which robbed her of her ability to see and hear. And it was through the assistance of her teacher, and this is important, Annie Sullivan, that Helen Keller learned to communicate, learned to transcend that inability to see and hear and to connect with the reality that surrounded her. The first verbal communication started with the word water and the realization that the motion her teacher was making in the palm of her hand while running cool water over the other hand symbolized the idea of water. In her book, The Story of My Life, Helen Keller recalled that moment. She says, I stood still, my whole attention fixed upon the motions of her fingers. Suddenly, I felt a misty consciousness, as of something forgotten, a thrill of returning thought. And somehow the mystery of language was revealed to me. I knew then that W-A-T-E-R meant the wonderful, cool something that was flowing over my hand. The living word awakened my soul, gave it light, hope set it free. After that moment, Helen Keller, she would flourish, working her way through Radcliffe College, writing numerous books and poems, one of which we will look at later, and speaking publicly from vaudeville to the stages of small town schools. Now, in the life of Helen Keller, Professor Marcus Bach, a well-known 20th century professor of comparative religions, describes Helen Keller's journey, and a journey that overcame the physical limitations of reality. And he delves deeper into that inner, that spiritual reality that Helen Keller conquered through the assistance of her teacher, tonight's theme. In his well-known book, Circle of Faith, and I think for many of you, you may be familiar with it. It's a book where Professor Bach encounters 5 leading individuals of the mid-20th century, including Helen Keller, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, Shohi Effendi, Pope Pius XII, Albert Schweitzer, and Teresa Newman. If you're not familiar with this book, it is a fantastic book, so well written. On Helen Keller, Professor Bach wrote, "Let me tell you how her path crossed the man from Nazareth, that is Jesus, and let us meet some of the people who guided her along the way. The spiritual revelation began with the influence of Annie Sullivan. In fact, we can discover an analogy, and this is important, between the circumstances of this relationship and the awakening that takes place in many persons during their spiritual quest. For there are those of us who live in spiritual darkness until a teacher comes, a teacher who helps us discover the water of life and defines for us the association between reality and symbol." I want to say that one more time. For there are those of us who live in spiritual darkness until a teacher comes, a teacher who helps us discover the water of life and defines for us the association between reality and symbol. This last sentence is fundamental to tonight's theme. He also writes, "There is an analogy here, and no one would understand it better than Helen Keller herself. She knows what is meant by a leap in the dark from the thoughts to things. She learned this in early life at the pump house. The reality of the water and word water ignited something in her spirit. It bridged the gap between the abstract expression of the object and sent a momentary spiritual flash vibrating between her consciousness and divine consciousness. Until that moment, her life had been a kind of somnambulistic wandering in the jungle of unrelated experience. Having made the leap, the true meaning of life lay clearly in her path. Wow, Professor Bach's, though, his language is truly amazing to read. And while this is not a perfect example, there is something very profound that is being highlighted. And it is the role of a teacher, Annie Sullivan, and how she guides Helen Keller and connects her to a world that she cannot see or hear. She aids in connecting her mind to what exists around her. Now, to think more deeply about this idea, we're going to peel the next layer. And let us go and look at what Plato shares in the Allegory of the Cave. The allegory allows us to think about the difference between the reality that exists in front of us and true reality. Again, remember that the purpose of our conversation tonight is to understand how can we perceive, how do we understand reality? How, if we cannot readily perceive it with our senses, right? And the role of a divine teacher as we go through this presentation in helping us understand spiritual reality, and we'll get there. But first, Plato in the Allegory of the Cave provides this stunning picture. And it's a picture of a group of people who have lived chained to the wall of a cave all their lives, facing a blank wall. And the people watch shadows projected on the wall from objects passing in front of a fire behind them. So let's look at the image on the left that clearly demonstrates this. And the prisoners give names to these shadows. The shadows are the prisoner's reality. But as we all know, they are not accurate representations of the real world. Plato then supposes in this allegory that a prisoner is freed. Now, the prisoner, if they are freed, would probably look around and see the fire. And what would happen? The light would hurt his eyes and would make it difficult for him to see the objects casting the shadows. If it were up to him, he would probably look right back at the shadows because they seem more real than what he is seeing in front of him, in front of the fire. He would not believe that that is actual reality. Now, if we suppose that the prisoner decides to leave the cave, either by free will or is forced out of the cave into the light of the sun, the prisoner would probably feel this utmost pain. And this would only worsen when the radiant light of the sun overwhelms his eyes and blinds him. But what happens? Slowly his eyes adjust to the light of the sun. And the freed prisoner would think that the world outside the cave was actually superior to the world that he had experienced in the cave. And as a sort of teacher, or what is referred to as the philosopher king, the freed prisoner would seek to share with the prisoners the true reality that exists. So this story has two key themes. One is understanding true reality, and two is the role of the philosopher king, what we might call the divine teacher, the manifestation, who comes to educate humanity on spiritual reality. And this allegory causes us to reflect on how do we perceive reality, the shadows versus the true objects, the material versus the spiritual, and the relationship between the two of them. Now, thinking about Plato's allegory and these images, the image of the shadow, it is truly awesome to read the words of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, and his son Abdul-Baha. And this image, again, of the shadow. Let's read it together. Baha'u'llah writes, "O fleeting shadow, pass beyond the baser stages of doubt and rise to the exalted heights of certainty. Open the eye of truth that thou mayest behold the veilless beauty and exclaim, hallowed be thy Lord, the most excellent of creators." And Abdu'l-Baha writes, this present life is even as a swelling wave or a mirage or drifting shadows. Could ever a distorted image on the desert serve as refreshing waters? Know thou that the kingdom is the real world, and this nether place is only its shadow stretching out. Let's say that again. Know thou that the kingdom is the real world, and this nether place is only its shadow stretching out. A shadow hath no life on its own. Its existence is only a fantasy and nothing more. It is but images reflected in water and seeming as pictures to the eye. And then I think back to these words of Professor Bach referring to Helen Keller and Annie Sullivan, which we read twice, but I'll read it again. It is, for there are those of us who live in spiritual darkness until a teacher comes, a teacher who helps us to discover the water of life and defines for us the association between reality and symbol, between shadow and object. Before diving deeper in this theme, I think that there may be some of you on this Zoom who may be new to the Baha'i faith. So I thought it might be helpful to very quickly provide background on the Baha'i faith and Baha'u'llah. The Baha'i religion is the youngest of the world's religions. The founder, Baha'u'llah, whose name means the glory of God, was born in 1817. And Baha'u'llah tells us that throughout history, God has sent to humanity a series of divine teachers, known as manifestations of God, because they manifest the attributes, the will of God to humanity for the period of time to which they come. They are here to provide the advancement for civilization. These manifestations, these divine teachers include Krishna, Moses, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, and Baha'u'llah. The religions of the world, Baha'u'llah tells us, come from the same source and are in essence successive chapters of one religion from God, successively helping us understand spiritual reality as humanity's capacities evolve. Now, as the divine teacher for today, central to Baha'u'llah's teaching is the oneness of mankind, which is a spiritual principle based on the understanding of a spiritual reality that Baha'u'llah offers humanity. Its outward manifestations include those essential relationships that must guide humanity, which include racial and economic justice, gender equality, and service to all. Now, in our short period of time, let us examine what Baha'u'llah and the Baha'i writings teach us who may be like prisoners in the cave looking at the shadows on the wall, what they teach us about spiritual reality. Baha'u'llah starts by telling us that the soul is a mystery. That's his first guidance to us. He said, "Thou hast asked me concerning the nature of the soul. Know verily that the soul is a sign of God, a heavenly gem whose reality the most learned of men hath failed to grasp, and whose mystery no mind, however acute, can ever hope to unravel." Baha'u'llah further elucidates, "Verily I say, the human soul is, in its essence, one of the signs of God, a mystery among his mysteries. Within it lieth concealed that which the world is now utterly capable of apprehending." So Baha'u'llah is telling us the soul is a mystery. It is not gendered. It doesn't have race. It's not a nationality. It is this mysterious substance. However, as the divine teacher, Baha'u'llah gives us markers. He provides us guidance of spiritual reality in a way that we can comprehend it. Now, for tonight's presentation, I have bucketed this key guidance that he provides into 5 buckets. It's totally arbitrary, right? But I thought it might be helpful for us as we think more closely about spiritual reality. And these themes are: 1, we are spiritual beings. 2, we are created in the image of God. 3, our soul progresses and is eternal. 4, our soul's progress is dependent on God's grace. And 5, Baha'u'llah provides continuous encouragement, but he also warns us not to get attached to this material world, not to get attached to the shadows that appear in the cave. My plan is, and we're going to move through this quickly, is to briefly review each of these themes, but we're going to do it looking directly at the Baha'i writings. And then what I will do is I will share some concluding thoughts before jumping in to the discussion question. So let's look at these writings. First, we are all spiritual beings and our source is the same. Baha'u'llah writes, the incomparable creator hath created all men from one same substance and hath exalted their reality above the rest of his creatures. And then Abdu'l-Baha explains the relationship between our soul and our body. Because I think there's often this notion, and many of you probably have heard it, that our soul must exist somewhere inside our body, as if it is sewn next to one of our organs. And Abdu'l-Baha writes, the connection of the spirit with the body is even as the connection of this lamp with a mirror. If the mirror is polished and perfected, the light of the lamp appears therein. And if the mirror is broken or covered with dust, the light remains concealed. The second theme is that we are created in the image of God. And I think this is something that is familiar in many of the world's religions. Many of us probably know from Genesis, where God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. However, Baha'u'llah helps us understand that we're not actually created in the physical image of God, but that we are endowed with attributes and virtues. These are the attributes and virtues of God that are latent within us and have the capacity to develop. In the hidden words of Baha'u'llah, he writes, O Son of Man, veiled in my immemorial being and in the ancient eternity of my essence, I knew my love for thee. Therefore I created thee, have engraved on thee mine image, and revealed to thee my beauty. He also says, upon the reality of man, however, he hath focused the radiance of all his names and attributes and made it a mirror of his own self. And then Baha'u'llah reframes how we also think about our creation and original sin. And I want to thank my mom for helping me think about this. Baha'u'llah focuses on our inherent nobility, right? Of course, that makes sense. If we're created in the image of God, we must also have that nobility within us. Baha'u'llah writes, and this is one of my favorite passages, O Son of Spirit, noble have I created thee, yet thou hast abased thyself. Rise then unto that which thou wast created. The third theme is the soul progresses and is eternal. Now, we consistently see in the Baha'i writings this emphasis on the progress of the soul and its eternity. Now, it's interesting. I don't know how many of you have experienced this, but in Western society, I think there is a belief, and I often hear it from our friends, that our actions in this world, so if we think about eternity being like, okay, I can't stretch my hands that wide, but if we think about it that wide, and if we think about just like this speck of what this life is relative to eternity, there's this notion that whatever happens in this world determines our eternal condition. That is, that after our death, that we almost plateau in either the realms of heaven or hell. Now, let's not talk about hell because I know that's not exciting to talk about. So let's talk about heaven, right? And so in the case of heaven, right, what does this plateau look like? I'll share with you what my friends have shared with me. It's joyful. You know, you're with loved ones. You're eating good food. You're on a beach, glorious weather, and there's like endless good times. It's like it just doesn't end, right? And like these descriptions are great. And Baha'u'llah talks about how glorious the next world is, right? He emphasizes that we can't even fathom how glorious it is. But there is this notion that we have that it's like this joyful plateau that's static. There's no progress. And Baha'u'llah alters. He changes this perception. And the first thing he does is if we look at, before we get into the writings, if we look at the image on the left of our screens, we see a fetus. And Baha'u'llah tells us that the life after is as different as the life from the womb is to life outside of the womb, right? Inside the womb, the fetus has to develop its human faculties, right? What are these? It's eyes, legs, ears, arms, and all of these organs in order to function in this world, the world outside of the womb. And it is also interesting to note that the mind of the fetus could be said as finite relative to the world outside. It has no way of comprehending why it's developing these organs. It just does develop them. And it has no way of comprehending what life outside of the womb looks like. It doesn't understand how its physical endowments, its limbs and organs are necessary for its functioning after it is born. In the same manner, in this lifetime, we develop our spiritual endowments, our spiritual qualities, our attributes. We could call those attributes justice, love, service, compassion, truthfulness, joy. Now let's look at what Abdu'l-Baha says. He says, it followeth that in this world too, he must prepare for the world beyond. That which he needeth in the world of the kingdom, he must obtain and prepare here. Just as he acquired the powers necessary for the world in the world of the womb, so likewise he must obtain that which he will need in the world of the kingdom. That is to say, all the heavenly powers in this world. Now, while our minds are also finite, I find this absolutely fascinating to think about how we have to develop these spiritual qualities, these spiritual endowments, in order to support and unfold capabilities that we can't even imagine, right? So here we are guided that the soul progresses and it is eternal. And there is that in this world that we must develop our spiritual capacities and endowment. And talking about the eternity of the soul, Baha'u'llah writes, and now concerning thy question regarding the soul of man and its survival after death, know thou of a truth that the soul, after the separation from the body, will continue to progress until it attaineth the presence of God. It will endure as long as the kingdom of God. Now, the fourth theme is that God, Baha'u'llah, constantly reminds us that we need God's grace to help us. We make effort in this world and ask for God's assistance. For those familiar with the Baha'i writings, these passages are very familiar. In a morning prayer that Baha'u'llah revealed, a part of it, he refers to God as, "Thou art he who changeth through his bidding abasement into glory, and weakness into strength, and powerlessness into might, and fear into calm, and doubt into certainty." In another place, "He whom the grace of thy mercy aideth, though he be but a drop, shall become the boundless ocean. And the merest atom which the outpouring of thy loving kindness assisteth, shall shine even as the radiant star." And then the fifth theme is that Baha'u'llah constantly provides encouragement and yet warns us not to get attached to this material world, not to get attached to those shadows on the wall. This is actually one of my favorite passages from Baha'u'llah. He said, "Ye are even as the bird which soareth with the full force of its mighty wings, and with complete and joyous confidence through the immensity of the heavens, until impelled to satisfy its hunger, it turneth longingly to the water and clay of the earth below it, and having been entrapped in the mesh of its desire, findeth itself impotent to resume its flight to the realms whence it came." Baha'u'llah says, "O my servants, defile not your wings with the clay of waywardness and desire." Baha'u'llah and the Baha'i writings on the nature of the soul, understanding that spiritual reality that is true reality, that our physical senses can't detect. These writings are massive and are unparalleled in religious history. Tonight, we went through only 5 themes, but we all know that there is so much more. And for those who are studying the Baha'i faith, or for Baha'is who are interested to read more, I suggest you consider some of the following books, including Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah, The 7 Valleys, The Hidden Words, and Some Answered Questions. Before diving into our discussion question, I just want to recap what we discussed in the last 40 minutes. We explored the role of the teacher in guiding the pupil in understanding reality. We first examined the story of Helen Keller, who was aided by her teacher, Annie Sullivan, to understand a reality that she was incapable of seeing and hearing. We then looked at Plato's Allegory of the Cave, where he examined how the prisoners perceived reality to be those shadows on the wall. And the freed prisoner, later to be called the philosopher king, was able to understand true reality outside the cave. We then thought more deeply about the role of the divine teacher and applied it to Baha'u'llah, guiding our understanding of spiritual reality, our soul, and our purpose. Before getting to our discussion question, I wanted to share a poem by Helen Keller. As we started tonight with her story, it feels right to read an excerpt from her poem, The Song of the Stone Wall. Now, this poem, Helen Keller, and remember, she cannot see or hear, she describes a New England stone wall. Imagine a stone wall along a garden or in the forest, right? And what do we know about this stone wall? All the different stones are different shapes. Some are jagged, some are smooth. There's moss growing in between. Sometimes when the rain comes, some rain collects in some of the crevices of the stone. And why am I sharing this poem? What does it have to do with tonight? Because in a most touching manner, Helen Keller likens the stones to humanity, to spiritual beings, not aware of their spiritual reality. She says, the wall is built of field stones great and small, tumbled about by frost and storm, shaped and polished by ice and rain and sun, some flattened, grooved, and chiseled. I understand the triumph and truth wrought into these walls of rugged stone. They are a miracle of patient hands. They are a victory of suffering, a paean of pain. All pangs of death, all cries of birth are in the mute moss-covered stones. They are eloquent to my hands. Oh, beautiful blind stones, inarticulate and dumb. In the deep gloom of their hearts, there is a gleam of the primeval sun, which looked upon them when they were begotten. So in the heart of man shines forever a beam from the everlasting Son of God. Unresponsive, rude are the stones, yet in them divine things lie concealed. I hear their imprisoned chants. We are fragments of the universe, chips of the rock whereon God laid the foundation of the world. Out of immemorial chaos he wrought us. Out of the sun, out of the tempest, out of the travail of the earth, we grew. So thinking about what we covered in this short period of time, I wanted to pose a discussion question. And that is, if we recognize that we have a soul and there's a spiritual reality, how does that influence our actions in this world? How does it influence how we understand the oneness of humankind, of mankind, that is central to Baha'u'llah's teachings, which highlights our spiritual reality? So with that, Mariam, I will turn it to you, and maybe we can engage on this question.
Thank you so much, dearest Jian. I'm going to, you didn't send me the question in the chat, but it's okay.
Do you want me to send it to you right now?
It's okay. If anybody has, I am not able to see all of the friends. Oh, I do see that Brett has his hand up. I just want to make sure, I'm sorry, this is not my usual computer, so I'm not very versed in figuring out how.
Do you want me to, actually, I can put the question in the chat. If you give me a second, I'll do it.
Well, I just want to see whose hand is up, because I think that people did put their hands up. I just can't see them. So I did see Brett. If your hand was up, can you go ahead? And I'm giving you the floor to speak, but I'm not absolutely sure that I saw your hand.
You saw my hand, but it was clapping.
Oh, I see it.
It was a clapping pose, not a question pose.
Okay.
But I will say thank you, Jian. I love that. I love your methodical approach. And yeah, it took me back, Plato's analogy of the cave, back to my master's degree in philosophy. Good memories, some confusing memories, but good memories overall. So thank you. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
So, Jian John, if you can put it in the chat just for everyone else. So this is, I mean, I'm not, the presentation isn't over. So this discussion is part of your presentation, as I understand it. So I just think it would be good if you did put it in the chat for everybody, just so people can peruse it and kind of, you know, think about it while they read it. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that Alex Boysen from Norway is here. He might have a question.
Well, I think what Jian has done is to invite us all to discuss the question in the chat. And I'm just going to reread it, which is, if we have a soul and there is a spiritual reality, how should this influence our actions in this world? How does it influence how we understand the oneness of mankind? I actually kind of want to start that discussion because I've actually been thinking of this today, and so hopefully, Jian, you can help me out if I'm going off track, or if my thoughts are you know, are in line with your presentation. But I don't know how it is in Chicago. I know, are you living in Chicago, Jian? Or are you?
I'm in Washington, D.C. now.
Oh, sorry. Well, I don't know how it is in the States, but in Canada or in Ontario, where we are right now, COVID has created this huge boom of real estate, which is so. It's such an interesting and also very paradoxical event, because people have lost their jobs and lost their businesses because of COVID. But at the same time, there's kind of on one hand, people have lost everything. On the other hand, there's kind of this preponderance of sudden wealth and materialism that has kind of erupted as a result of the pandemic, or throughout this pandemic. And I was at the bank today, and I was listening to discussions around me, and I was thinking to myself, you know, we've gone through a pandemic where so many people have lost their lives, and we've become, I think, so much more attuned to that metaphysical, or I'd like to think that we've become so much more attuned to that metaphysical world, just because so many of us became so close to it during this pandemic, while loved ones died, relatives died, friends died. Maybe not so much, you know, where you live, but I know in different parts of the world, my friends in Serbia and Bosnia were going to funerals, 2-3 funerals a day. And so I found it in a way so sad that our culture, you know, became so suddenly obsessed with this idea, you know, in here where I live, with real estate, and with suddenly, you know, being so worried about, you know, the rising price of real estate. And this has become this like major obsession with people, where we've been so close to having lost, you know, huge numbers of humanity throughout a pandemic. And I feel like we're missing this connection to that metaphysical part of us. You know, we're so obsessed with the material and security through having things and buying property, that we've completely lost our understanding of security that is unconditional, and the security that comes from a connection to our Creator that is intangible and metaphysical. And I was thinking, I mean, funnily enough, I was at the bank and thinking about that today, as I was listening to the conversation. And, you know, I think that if I didn't have a little bit of this awareness of the presentation that you gave, I would feel extremely insecure, thinking that my survival is only material and rests upon my ability to make the most of the material kind of profiteering that has come out of the pandemic. And so maybe you can just comment on, you know, I had a little bit of an epiphany and a thought process today, So
Can I-
perhaps,
Let me just share a reflection or thought and offer it. You know, Baha'u'llah, when he guides us about reality, we're all created from the same substance. We're all created in the image of God. And Abdul Baha, we saw, tells us that we are on this earth, we have to develop our virtues, our spiritual qualities, right? And we talked a little about those spiritual qualities. Those spiritual qualities are joy, love, wisdom, service, right? There are so many that we can each think about. Now, if we think about it, if we're all created from the same substance, our soul is not race. My soul is not a male soul. My soul is not an Iranian American's, soul. My soul is not like light brown, right? It has associated with this body for the purpose of developing its qualities and attributes, which are necessary, as necessary in what we are to experience after we pass away as our hands and legs and eyes and ears are. So if we all have to develop our capacities, how does that make us think about justice? Does it make me think that gender equality is just for women to address? Or does everybody have a responsibility to address the injustice, whether it be around gender, whether it be economic injustice or racial injustice? That we are all these souls trying to correct, develop ourselves and correct the condition of the world. And they are both of those are intimately linked. And then how does it make us think about the extremes of wealth and poverty, right? If we are like, let's say we are in a symphony and everybody has an instrument, a role to play. What happens if people cannot play their instrument? They cannot play their role, then all of humanity is robbed, right? And this is what I think is fascinating about what Baha'u'llah is guiding us in humanity. A humanity that is so physically oriented. And he's saying, no, you have to think about your spiritual oneness and manifest that in your actions and how you treat one another and how you advance the world forward. So that was just a reflection. But I see Shahla's hand is up.
sorry, before we go to Mrs. Stee, if we have a question in the chat that's been waiting. And so I think you did cover some of it, but if you can read it, can you say exactly what we are preparing for in this world for our lives in the spiritual world? And then we'll definitely go to Mrs. Stee.
Yeah, and I think maybe I covered part of that Abdul Baha guides us in that passage, that we have to develop our spiritual qualities. And I think he makes it very clear, because spiritual qualities could sound a little abstract, right? And we know in the Baha'i writings that these qualities are virtues that are core to our soul. And those virtues we discussed, right? I named a few of them. I'm sure many of you can name it, but I'll name this what comes to mind: justice, honesty, service, compassion, humility. All of these qualities are what must be developed and are required as our soul continues to progress. And, just reflecting again, Baha'u'llah also reminds us that we can't comprehend the condition of the next world after our soul dies, because our minds are finite, right? Baha'u'llah likened it to the womb. The fetus can't comprehend it, but it knows it must, it develops its physical endowments, its organs, its legs, its eyes, its ears, its nose, in order to use those as its instruments in this world. And so it is pretty awesome to think, when we think about how the soul is to progress, how awesome that progression is going to be, and we can't even fathom it.
Shahla Khanum, if you'd like to ask your question. You might
Oh,
be
you're on mute.
muted. Are you on mute, Shahla Khanum?
Now I am. Now I am. Thank you so much, Jian John. And it's fantastic. I love that you used Helen and Annie's story, because I was very much affected as a child by these stories, and I love the movies that was made about it, and also the book. I often have been thinking about how Annie used the inner senses to teach, because there wasn't enough outer senses for Helen to learn. I think in the writings, Baha'u'llah uses the inner senses. And I think that we cannot develop one of our intellects, physical and spiritual, if we don't develop it holistically. I think any human being that doesn't have those three things equally develops does not seem to do well. Could you share some of the writings or some of your ideas of how that idea of being holistic and using the inner senses could help us develop for the next world?
Oh boy, that's a big question. I want to see if, I feel like I've talked a lot. Ms. D, let me see if others have thoughts that they would like to share, and then I will chime in with some of my thoughts. Are there others that have thoughts on this?
I have a thought on this. So I'm a cancer survivor, and during the time that I was going through chemotherapy, and I lost my hair, and I was going through quite a rigorous treatment for breast cancer, and I do remember having a feeling that I'd lost a lot of my physical characteristics throughout the treatment. But what I really recall was this extremely strong sense of intuition that became cultivated, while at the same time that I was losing, I didn't have eyebrows, I didn't have eyelashes, I didn't have hair, and physically I was kind of being deleted in a way, I felt. But I at the same time, I had become extremely porous, like in a I think emotional and spiritual way. And I do remember feeling like I would meet people and I would immediately have a sense of what they were feeling, where they were at in their journey, if they were in a good place, if they weren't in a good place. That sense of connection to others became extremely strong. And I think that this is, to the extent that physically we're not as strong or powerful, we can kind of increase our ability to have that connection with the intangible world.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I don't see any more hands, but I don't see a full screen. So if anyone else has their hand up or would like to say something, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Alex?
Alex, my mother is insisting that you say something, and I fear that if you don't say anything, she will just continue, even metaphysically, to hound you, to find you. So I think it would be in your best interest, Alex, to make a contribution. Alex is saying that he cannot unmute. Is there someone who can unmute Alex? Because I don't have.
Yes, Alex, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Forgive me. Gosh, you're very kind, friends. Thank you, Jian. That was just so enlightening, really beautifully presented and putting everything in context in what the history of mankind, which everybody can relate to. Here's a question, and you forgive me. This is really about the relationship between this world and the next, and the similarities. So let's say I imagine myself in this world, and I live my life day to day, and there are tests. And we know that in the next world, tests aren't, let's say, the currency of existence, like they are here, tests and overcoming challenges. But I'm tempted to make a generalization that what happens here is cyclical. I'm going through tests, and the farther I go, the more tests come. It just returns the same over and over again. And I might not feel that really there is much progress. I'm just bogged down in still greater tests, like I'm going deeper into the mud, perhaps. That's the negative view of it. So why would I want to go forward? What's my motivation? And then I'm thinking, okay, the next world, again, it'll be cyclical. And what's the purpose? This idea, I don't know, I know it's not correct, of course, but where's the wrong turn, you might say? Because of course, this is a limitless creation, and it's infinitely glorious. We know this intellectually, but it doesn't seem like it on the ground, you might say. It seems very cyclical, and the idea that in the next world it'll be cyclical again doesn't really isn't very motivational. And you'll think that, oh, for eternity it'll just be a cycle again and again and again, and we'll never reach anywhere. Thanks again. Really.
Well, I don't know if I can address that question, because it is such a profound question, right? I mean, there are stories relating to Abdul Baha that come to mind. And some of those stories are how the tests that we experience in this world. And there's a passage, and I don't have it to memory, where he says, I love you, something to the fact that I love you, and yet I pray for tests for you, or I'm happy for tests for you. It's I might be paraphrasing. I'm paraphrasing that, but it also, I believe, it also comes up with Howard Colby Ives and Portals to Freedom. If I remember it correctly, he was very sick for a period of time, and Abdul Baha encouraged him to go through that this was important for his development. That, it might not be like the greatest joy to go through these tests outwardly, but inwardly growth was occurring that was imperceptible. And so, we also get a lot of guidance that in the next world, how glorious it is. And if we were to know about how glorious it would be, we would try to end our development soon in this world, or terminate our lives in order to experience it. So we know that there is something glorious in what is to come, but there's also progress that exists, and we don't know how that progress looks. I think we try to frame it in terms of our human condition right now, but there is no way to frame it given our minds are so finite relative to what exists. Those are just some, I'm sure others, could contribute to this, because it's such an important and probably, one of the most fundamental questions that we have as humans.
Thank you, Jian John. Is there, if anyone else has their hand up, once again, please go ahead and unmute. We welcome your contribution.
There are no hands up. Oh, actually, there's one now. One.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So at this point, I would like to thank Jian profusely. This was such a beautiful presentation for so many reasons, but I think that one of the things I really want to say is what an absolutely aesthetically beautiful, well-organized PowerPoint presentation. I thought it was absolutely, it was a stunning presentation, and just the quality of it was so phenomenal. I know that Jian has a high power corporate position, and it's quite obvious that he's doing really well, because your presentation was just breathtaking. Thank you so much. And the metaphor with Annie Sullivan and Helen Keller, I think all of us as children learned about Helen Keller, and the fact that you brought her into this, you began, the foundation of your presentation started with Helen Keller and her relationship to her teacher, was just such a beautiful entryway into this topic. So thank you so much, Jian. I hope that you will you will come back again and see us. I'm sure Farouz will and make sure of that. Thank you so much. It was beautiful, and it's so beautiful. I just listening to you, and the way that you convey the information is also so heartening and so beautiful. So thank you so much. Such a beautiful presentation during the Baha'i fast, which kind of made it even more poignant. So we really appreciate you being here. And
can you see there's a hand up?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. It's Ms. Azad. Farida Khanum Azad.
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, the question that I have is that in this world, even though we know that we are spiritual beings, severe tests and difficulties that are sometimes the bad things happen to us unjustly. Because
I'm very sorry, but we can't hear you. Your sound is terrible. The audio is very bad. Is there any way that you can improve it?
Hold on. I'm out in restaurant. It's a lot of noise. Let me see if I can. You hear me better now?
Yes.
You can hear me better now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So, like when I look at life, they're just like, we talk about death, but there are certain people that have gone through unimaginable tests. Not just 1 or 2 or 5 or 10. It's just like mind-boggling. And like when you talk to other people, they say, no, I had a good marriage. I had a lot of good opportunities at work to advance. Like every aspect of their life seems to have been working, and maybe 1 or 2 areas they were challenged. And there are certain people who their marriage failed, they were unjustly fired from work. Just so many horrible things has happened to them. So when I look at this, I always wonder, why is this happening? Are those people who are getting a lot less tests and they seem to be failing? Are they more beloved by God? or the people who are getting so many tests, and even though the writings say nothing befalls my loved ones except that which profited them, or no one is tested beyond their capacity. But I guess the comment that I want to make and the question that I want to raise is, there are individuals whose tests are so many and so overwhelmingly difficult that, and they don't seem to find, and no one can help them, because it seems like these tests and difficulties are beyond daily experience. So the only way they can survive is to go to God and to Baha'u'llah, and just with complete humility acknowledge that this is something that only God and Baha'u'llah can help. Because no therapist can help, no friend can help, no family member can help. No one has gone through it, because to help someone else, you must have gone through it. And if you haven't gone through it, how can you help someone else? So that's the comment and the question that I'm raising, is that if you are one of those people, and sometimes you just feel, I don't know what to do with all these steps, no one seems to understand or be able to help, who else do I have except God and Baha'u'llah?
That's right. That's right. I don't think I have an answer to your question. I just have some observations and reflections, right? I can't answer at all why the severity of tests hit some people and not others. I also think, and maybe I'm just developing this thought too, I think there are maybe different types of tests. There are tests that we get hit as individuals, and then there are societal tests, and maybe they're interrelated. Like when you think about the refugee crisis, or what's happening in parts of different parts of the world, right? If it is in Syria, if it is right now in Ukraine, and that is a test for humanity too, right? To recognize its oneness. And those two are related in ways that I can't comprehend. And it's also interesting because and I'm sure many of us are, and I wish I had the quotes in front of me. We also know in the Baha'i writings where Baha'u'llah says that he may also test us with the benefits of this world. If we are not focused on God and our spiritual reality. If we're focused on material things, he said, I might just keep on testing you with the benefits so you don't remember. And that is a mystery to me too. But you raise an important question. I just don't, it's one that I don't think any of us have the answer to. But when people are going through severe tests, I think we always show extreme compassion and support, because maybe those tests are also meant for us in a way to figure out how to support those individuals.
But what I've observed and experienced is, if you talk to people who haven't gone through those severe tests and difficulties, they lack an understanding. They lack an understanding of how painful and confusing this process is. Like, imagine having tests and difficulties that no therapist can help you with. No family member can help you with. No friend can help you with. Because like, you can't find information to like read and say, so this is how someone else went through all these tests and difficulties. Because as we're growing up, you're told like there are certain foundations. Like, if you do this right, you get married, you have a good marriage, you study, you choose a career, you do well in your career, and this and that, and this and that. we think that, okay, this is where I'm going to end up. And there are tests and difficulties that, in spite of some of this being right and some of them being terribly wrong, like you could even not imagine, like there could be these possible individuals or experiences. So I think like the question that it raises has been raising for me, and I've had really difficulty even finding people that I can dialogue with to gain a better understanding, is like, maybe, you know, the severity of our tests and difficulties is going to get so severe that nothing that we're aware of. Because I remember when I was younger, I used to think, oh, I had it all figured out. And then the test started. Oh my God. And it just like, I just got to a point, I said, I have absolutely no idea how to solve this test. No matter all my studies, they're not helping. No one that I've talked to is even has an understanding. They just say, go and pray more. I said, why? You don't think the person is praying enough? So I think that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that till we experience these severe, unimaginable tests that we never imagined, like such experiences, such horrible experiences are possible. And then when we go through it, because we have had no exposure or background, we've never had it before. We haven't seen anybody among our family and friends and co-workers. We haven't seen anybody. And then we have like no knowledge base, like we just have no wisdom base. We don't know, and no one knows what to tell you. Everybody just like, I don't know what to say to help you. And you say to yourself, I don't know what to do to help myself. And I think that when we get to that place, and maybe sooner or later, more of us are going to go through it. And I think for me, what it has done, it has made me realize I only can go to Baha'u'llah and God. I can talk to Baha'u'llah and God all day long. They understand, and I ask them, help me. You understand, your source of knowledge and wisdom. And if there is someone that can understand because they've gone through the experiences, then guide them to me. Because we are supposed to create a community. When the tests and difficulties become so severe that we have no idea what to do with them, and we know that the condition of the world is going to get worse, and an unforeseen calamity, the like of which we've never experienced before, you know, it will shake the limbs of mankind. And I know that the things I have experienced, I had never experienced before. So I think I guess the comment that I'm trying to make is, because this is my observation, and I've traveled a lot, that there is this culture in the Baha'i community where we don't talk sincerely about our tests and difficulties.
Farida Khanum, I'm so sorry, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to, because we have a timeline,
Okay.
and at 8:30 is the end of our timeline. But and I'm sure that
All right,
Jian wants to respond to you.
I understand. Can I finish my sentence?
Or go ahead.
Okay, so that's all I'm saying, that we need to encourage each other to create a culture so that we can sincerely connect with each other rather than then just say, hi, how are you? Fine, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I think that go ahead, Jian.
Oh, no, I just wanted to thank you for your comment and your observation. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I can speak for everybody when I say that I think we all go through tests that we believe are things that we will never be able to overcome. And I do think that having a community is so important. And I think that each of us have to take on the responsibility of building that community and being a member of that community. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can do as a spiritual being, is to connect with others in building a community. So thank you so much, Jian again. We are so happy to have had you again. And I think at this point, we are going to wrap up our presentation and move on for all of you who are able to stay to the devotional part of this meeting, which will be saying prayers for the our brothers and sisters in the Ukraine who are going through this extremely horrific time.
Mariam, there's one more hand up. Did you want to
I think that I understand, but 8:30 is the end of our meeting here today. So perhaps that person can write their question in the chat, and then what we can do is we can send it to Jian via email possibly, and he can respond to it. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I'd like to thank Alex from Norway and Rose from England. I think Rose, and there were two other people from England as well. I'm sure you all know it's about, I think it's midnight or 1 in the morning in England and Norway. So Jian, people have stayed up to watch you like a royal wedding. So you're a one-man royal wedding. So anyway, thanks again, and my big greetings to your lovely, wonderful mother, Mrs. Khodadad, who is also here. I always love to see her.
Also, may I ask Jian to start the prayer session with a prayer, please, Jian?
Oh, yes. Before I say a prayer, watching what is happening in Ukraine. A while ago, I don't know, maybe it was a long time ago, when I was in high school, for one summer, I spent in Ukraine. And I remember this so clearly. We were in Kiev. We spent a lot of time in Lviv, where you see a lot of reporting. And there was this beautiful small Baha'i community in Lviv. There were Baha'is at that time throughout Ukraine, Kiev, we were near Chernobyl at a Baha'i conference that included so many young Ukrainians. And I remember in Lviv, it was the occasion of the martyrdom of the Bab. So for those who are not Baha'is, the Bab was the forerunner to Baha'u'llah, proclaimed the coming of Baha'u'llah, maybe most comparable to John the Baptist, and is significant in the Baha'i revelation. And so, the commemoration for his martyrdom was held in Lviv, and it was one of probably the most touching commemorations that I had experienced. So, we think about not just the Baha'i community there, of course, and the communities there, but all of the Ukrainians, whatever their background, whether they, whatever it may be, whatever city they may be, we will remember them tonight. This is from Abdul Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith. O thou kind Lord, thou hast created all humanity from the same stock. Thou hast decreed that all shall belong to the same household. In thy holy presence, they are all thy tabernacle. All have gathered together at thy table of bounty. All are illumined through the light of thy providence. O God, thou art kind to all. Thou hast provided for all, dost shelter all, conferrest life upon all. Thou hast endowed each and all with talents and faculties, and all are submerged in the ocean of thy mercy. O thou kind Lord, unite all. Let the religions agree and make the nations one, so that they may see each other as one family and the whole earth as one home. May they all live together in perfect harmony. O God, raise aloft the banner of the oneness of mankind. O God, establish the most great peace. Cement thou, O God, the hearts together. O thou kind Father God, gladden our hearts through the fragrance of thy love. Brighten our eyes through the light of thy guidance. Delight our ears with the melody of thy word, and shelter us all in the stronghold of thy providence. Thou art the mighty and powerful. Thou art the forgiving. And thou art the one who overlooketh the shortcomings of all mankind.
O thou kind Lord, O thou who art generous and merciful, we are servants of thy threshold and are gathered beneath the sheltering shadow of thy divine unity. The sun of thy mercy is shining upon all, and the clouds of thy bounty shower upon all. Thy gifts encompass all. Thy loving providence sustains all. Thy protection overshadows all. And the glances of thy favor are cast upon all. O Lord, grant thine infinite bestowals, and let the light of thy guidance shine. Illumine the eyes, gladden the hearts with abiding joy. Confer a new spirit upon all people and bestow upon them eternal life. Unlock the gates of true understanding and let the light of faith shine resplendent. Gather all people beneath the shadow of thy bounty and cause them to unite in harmony, so that they may become as the rays of one sun, as the waves of one ocean, and as the fruits of one tree. May they drink from the same fountain. May they be refreshed by the same breeze. May they receive illumination from the same source of light. Thou art the giver, the merciful, the omnipotent. Abdul Baha.
O moj Bože, ujedini srca svojih slugu i otkri im svoj veliki cilj. Neka slijede tvoje zapovjedi i žive po tvom zakonu. Pomozi im, o Bože, u njihovom trudu i daj im snage da ti služe. O Bože, ne prepusti ih njima samima, već vodi njihove korake svjetlom svoje spoznaje. Razveseli njihova srca svojom ljubavlju. Doista, ti si njihov pomoćnik i njihov gospodin. Baha'u'llah.
Remover of difficulties in Malay. Adakah penghalau kesukaran-kesukaran selain Tuhan? Katakanlah, terpujilah Tuhan. Ya adalah Tuhan. Semua adalah hamba-Nya dan semua tunduk pada perintah-Nya. Adakah penghalau kesukaran-kesukaran selain Tuhan? Katakanlah, terpujilah Tuhan. Ia adalah Tuhan. Semua adalah hamba-Nya dan semua tunduk pada perintah.
ای پدر آسمانی، جنود ملکوت داری و ملائکه روحانی، ما بیچارگان مرغ بال و پرشکسته ایم، ولی در فضای ملکوت پرواز آرزو کنیم. ماهیان تشنه لبیم، دریای آب حیات طلبیم، پروانه عالم ناسوتیم، آرزوی سراج لاهوت داریم. در نهایت ضعف و بی‌قوتیم، ولی خود را به صف عالم میزنیم. پس ای رب الجنود تایید فرما تا سپاه انوار ظفر یابم و لشکر ظلمات شکست خورم. ما را به خدمت ملکوت موفق دار و بر اسرار الهی مطلع نما و به سلطنت سرمدی بشارت ده و از حیات ابدی بهره و نصیب بخش. زبان را گویا کن و دیده را بینا نما تا مشاهده عالم ملکوت کنیم و به نطق فصیح ستایش جمال و کمال تو نماییم. تویی بخشنده و مهربان. عبدالبها عباس.
Create in me a pure heart, O my God, and renew a tranquil conscience within me, O my hope. Through the Spirit of power, confirm thou me in thy cause, O my best beloved, and by the light of thy glory, reveal unto me thy path, O thou, the goal of my desire. Through the power of thy transcendent might, lift me up unto the heaven of thy holiness, O source of my being, and by the breeze of thine eternity, gladden me, O thou who art my God. Let thine everlasting melodies breathe tranquility on me, O my companion, and let the riches of thine ancient countenance deliver me from all except thee, O my master. And let the tidings of the revelation of thine incorruptible essence bring me joy, O thou who art the most manifest of the manifest, and the most hidden of the hidden. Hazrat Baha'u'llah.
Mr. Apritondi, please.
Ok, I'm saying one in Italian. Oh Signore, ho volto il viso verso il tuo regno di unità e mi sono immerso nel mare della tua misericordia. Oh Signore, richiara la mia vista con la visione della tua luce in questa oscura notte e rallegrami col vino del tuo amore in questa meravigliosa età. Oh Signore, fammi udire il tuo appello e schiudi dinanzi al mio volto le parole del tuo paradiso, così che io possa mirare la luce della tua gloria e venire attratto alla tua bellezza. In verità, tu sei il donatore, il generoso, il misericordioso, il perdonatore. Abdul Baha.
Oh God, my God, I testify to the unity and to the oneness. I breathe the auto processor of names and personer of the heaven by the pervasive influence of the excited word and the potency of the supreme pen to aid me with the ensign of the power and might, and to protect me from the mischief of the enemies who have violated their confident anti-testament to art verify to Almighty, the most powerful. Baha'u'llah. Thank you.
والا ربنا و ملاذنا از الکروبنا به بزرگ شمس وعدك کریم و خفف همومنا به نزول ملائکت نصرك المبین و انر ابصارنا به مشاهدت آیات امرک العظیم رب نفرغ علینا صبرا من لدنک رب نفتح علی وجوهنا ابواب السعادة والرحمة و ازغنا حلاوة الحنا و ارفعنا مقاما انت وعدتنا به فی صحفك و کتبک الی متی یا الهنا هذا الظلم و الطغیان الی متی هذا الجور و العدوان هل لنا من مأمن الا انت لا و حضرت رحمانیتک انت مجیر المضطرین انت سمیع دعاء الملهوفین ادرکنا بفضلک یا ربنا الابها ولا تخیب آمالنا یا مقصود العالمین و ارحم الراحمین. بنده آستانش شوقی.
Nasrin Khanum, could you say a prayer in Malaysian language or Indonesian language, please?
Ya Tuhan, kami ini lemah berilah kami kekuatan. Kami ini miskin, anugerahilah kami dengan kekayaan-Mu yang tak terbatas. Kami ini sakit, berilah kami kesembuhan keilahian-Mu. Kami ini tak berdaya, berilah kami kekuatan surgawi-Mu. Ya Tuhan, jadikanlah kami berguna di dunia ini. Bebaskanlah kami dari keadaan keakuan dan hawa nafsu. Ya Tuhan, jadikanlah kami teguh dalam cinta-Mu. Dan mungkinkanlah kami menyayangi seluruh umat manusia. Bantulah kami dalam pengabdian kepada dunia insani, agar kami dapat menjadi hamba dari hamba-hamba-Mu, agar kami dapat mencintai semua makhluk-Mu dan mengasihi seluruh umat-Mu. Ya Tuhan, Engkaulah Maha Perkasa, Engkaulah Maha Pengasih, Engkaulah Maha Pengampun, Engkaulah Maha Kuasa. Abdul Baha.
Mr. Primal, please.
O Thou who art the Lord of Lords, I testify that Thou art the Lord of all creation and the educator of all beings, visible and invisible. I bear witness that Thy power has encompassed the entire universe, that the hosts of the earth can never dismay Thee, nor can the dominion of all people and nations deter Thee from executing Thy purpose. I confess that Thou hast no desire except the regeneration of the whole world and the establishment of the unity of its people and the salvation of all them that dwell therein. Baha'u'llah.
مهری خانم.
والله ای دلبر یکتای من، آواره صحرایم و سرگشته بادی پیمان، در رهم افتان و خیزان و سرمست پیمانه پیمان، افتادم بیچارم، دل دادم شیداییم، سوداییم رسواییم، ولی روی به سوی تو آرم و آرزوی کوی تو دارم، در هجرانم پر حرمانم، بی سر و سامانم، به لطف و عنایتم شایانم، اسیرم مجیر شو، افتادم دستگیر شو. غریبم مونس جان شو بی کسم معین دل و جان گم از جهان و جهانیان بیزار فرما و در پناه خویش منزل و قرار بخش از بادون مستغنی کن و از عطای خویش بهره و نصیب ده. گناه بیامرز خطا بپوش عفو و غفران فرما زیرا گناهکاریم بدرفتاریم در بحر عصیان مستغرقیم توی محبوب مهربان توی بخشنده گناهان ای پروردگار اقتدار ده ثابت و پایدار نما بی صبر و قرار کن و مجنون جمال پر انوار نما و مفتون آن زلف مشکبار فرما تا بیگانه بخیش فراموش نماییم و مانند دریا به جوش و خروش آییم و از پیمانه پیمان مست و مدهوش کردیم توی بخشنده و مهربان و توی آمرزنده و آموزنده یاران
I just wanted to thank everyone for participating in this most special evening tonight. I myself was very, very touched by this fireside and by your presence. I wanted very much to finish with a Norwegian prayer by Alex. Although we are late and we have to give back this Zoom link, I don't know if Alex is available. I wanted to thank our friends from Malaysia and also Indonesia for sharing this link with their friends and to the leaders and with the leaders of thought whom they know, and I appreciate and recognize their attendance tonight. We really, really are very grateful to them. They have done great contribution to this series of fireside. Before I ask Alex, Jian, I just want you to know, and I choke when I say that, but I want you to know that you bring with yourself a sense of detachment, kindness, sensitivity, and depth of knowledge and faith, which really gives this fireside a different atmosphere. We love you. I want you to know that we love you.
Thank you for having me and for being patient as I have developed my thoughts and offered them. And thank you, Rose, for your endless encouragement. Thank you.
Before Alex starts, maybe we can ask you to think of something for April. Jian, the tears weren't for nothing, you know.
I would be honored. I would be honored to come back.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Alex, we are grateful that you're staying up till 2:30 at night. We love you, and please end the night for us.
God willing, thank you. Did you want it in Norwegian?
Yes.
Okay. Ditt navn min helbredelse, o min Gud. Og i hukommelse av deg mitt legemiddel. Å være deg nær mitt håp. Og kjærlighet til deg min ledsager. Din barmhjertighet mot meg min helbredelse og min hjelp, både i denne verden og i den kommende verden. Sannelig, du den overmåte gavmilde, den allvitende, den allvise.
I would like to thank Mr. Ali Jaberi for providing us this link. And I know that he has been waiting here for us to close 10 minutes ago. Thank you, Mr. Kamalabadi, for taking care of everything as usual. Tarajan, thank you for your prayers. Come back next week and every week, please. We love you. We love you. Everybody, it was a wonderful evening at your presence. Thank you so very much. Allah Abha, and there's a possibility that we will start next week at 8 o'clock. So as the Baha'is are fasting, in order for them to have time to break the fast. We love you and see you next week. Thank you. Thank you, Jian John. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Allah Abha, Allah Abha. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Allah
you.
Akbar.
Thank you.
Allah Abha, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Firuz. Anunjun Aziz, wonderful.
Thank
See you next week.
See you.
you.
See you next week. Fadai Shama. Fadai Shama.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We need
so much.
lots of prayers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Iraj, nice to see you, Iraj.
Nice to see you too, Stefano. Wonderful.
When are you coming again?
Hopefully soon. I don't know. I have no plans, but I love to come back.
Wonderful. Looking
Thank
forward.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Waiting.
Farah Khanum?
Beautiful chanting from Farah.
Beautiful.
Tara Khanum is beautiful. Mr. Tahir Zadeh, thank you for joining us. Mrs. Zamani, thank you, thank you. Alex, we love you. Thank you. Malihi,
Thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you all for the wonderful program. Enjoyed it. Bye.
Lovely.
Bye. Allah Akbar.
Thank you for sharing tonight.
روز همه قبول باشه.
Bye, everybody. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
آقای جابری فدای شما یک دنیا
قربان شما.
خیلی لطف کردی.
اختیار دارید. خواهش می‌کنم.
ببخشید آقای جابری. When is the Persian lessons going to start?
من فدای شما بشم نرگس خانم. هر کی هر جا آقای جابری رو میبینه یه سوالی داره. این اصلا مختص جناب جابری، کارش نمیشه کرد.
بیچاره آقای جابری.
تو بهشتم نشستن دیگه کار نمیشه کرد.
Because sometimes ago I received a link that they are going to start how to learn Farsi in a short while. So my grandchildren are waiting for the class to open. And me too, of course.
We don't have right now the Farsi class.
Well, in future there will be classes. آقای جابری عزیز.
Hopefully.
بله.
Thank you very much. We'll wait for it. Thank you so much.
We can actually ask around if there are any volunteers to do that, to conduct the class, then we can announce it.
Sure, sure.
Actually, there was a friend from Australia. I can't remember his name. He was from Brisbane, I think. Is that right, Mr. Iraj?
I don't remember if there was any volunteer, but from time to time, there are classes similar to this. So I think we just need to make an announcement and see if anyone has the time and enthusiasm and zeal to do that. Then we'll definitely
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Bye, everybody. Allah.
Bye-bye. First one, you're mute.
چه خوب. تارا جان شاهکار کردی. تارا جان شاه. بیا جلو. حالا میخوام شکلتو ببینیم. بیا جلو عزیزم. تارا جان چه صدایی.
خوشحالم که دوست داشتین و به هر حال این چند روزم یک هفته هست که من اینجا کووید درگیر کووید بود و از دیروز یکم بهتر شدم و به هر حال صدا اومد و ممنون، خوشحالم.
آخه
خانم مسرور برای محفل اونس دعوت کنید.
آره تارا جون عزیزم، الان ایمیل تو برای من بذار توی چت قربونت برم. الان برو بذار توی چت تا قطع نشده بود و قربونت برم. آقای جابریش میبینم که افطار کردی، خیلی حالتون جا اومده همچین. بله میخندید. قبلا یه ساعت پیشش نمیخندیدین، خیلی حالتون بد بود آقای جابری، مثل مریم هم امروز یک کلمه نتونست حرف بزنه.
امروز که خیلی خوب حرف زد. چی میگی؟
تو فصل دیگه نباید چرمن شه، بلد نیست باید غذا نخوره حرف بزنه.
خیلی هم خوب بودش. آقای جابری این درخت قشنگ چیه پشت سر شما؟
سوال سختی کردید خانم.
قشنگه.
holyflower1@yahoo.com. خب اینو الان آقای جابری شما میگه ممکنه این holyflower1@yahoo.com رو جنابالی هم یادداشت بفرمایی؟
تارا خانم میشه شماره تلفنتون رو بذارید برامون اگر امکان دارید؟
آیا ایشان حاضر بیاد در ضیافت ما و برای ما مناجات بخونه؟
آقای دکتر شما هنوز در حال پس دادن جریمه هستید، از این سوالا نکنید.
آقای دکتر پس فکر میکنین 2 ساعت دارن آقای جابری چیز مینویسن و قلم آوردن و اینا، ایشون بی خودی وقتشون رو تلف نمیکنن. ایشون الان از نیم ساعت پیش این فکر رو کردن، بلکه از 2 ساعت پیش.
بله
اشتباه میکنم ایرج خان؟
نه خیلی درسته.
ما میزبان ضیافت عید نوروز هستیم و اگر ایشون تشریف بیارن واقعا ضیافت ما رنگین خواهد شد.
من دیگه
فرمایید شماره تلفنتون رو.
نوشتن اونجا شما؟
نوشتن؟
بله.
من نمیبینم. برای شما احتمالا فرستادم.
آها اجازه بدید من قطع نکنید.
خب پس برای من بفرستید.
شما صبر کنید من بله چشم. گرفتین؟
20604 اولش.
خیلی ممنون از این واقعا جلسه خیلی عالی.
بسیار ممنون. مهر خانم زمانی عزیز، شما در عرض مدت به این کوتاهی آماده عروسی شدین با این سرعت. آفرین به شما.
نه کاری نکردم.
یه رو پیش به من گفتین من هنوز آماده نیستم، یه رو به اینجوری شد.
ببینید من فکر میکنم وقتی تو جلسه ای حتی در زوم در حقیقت دیگه فراموش کردیم، وقتی حاضر میشیم حتی باید عطر رو هم بزنیم، عطر و گلاب رو هم بزنیم، برای اینکه با هوالله شروع میشه. برای این شاهد عزیزانی خواهیم بود که عشق از بهاءالله در سینه‌شون هست. بنابراین باید مرتب بشینیم. البته من همین الانشم مرتب نیستم، ولی خب به هر حال باید آراسته بشینیم در مقابل.
قبول میکنم. بسیار درسته.
خود شما همیشه ماشاءالله آراسته بود.
خدا من والا هنوز به آراستگی خیلی راه دارم. فرید خانم آزاد، امیدوارم که این جلسه را شما پسندیده باشین.
خیلی من البته دیر اومدم، وسطاش اومدم، ولی خیلی خوب بود.
خیلی خوش آمدین. ما حالا 2 مرتبه از ژیان جان تقاضا میکنیم 2 مرتبه بیاد به سوالایی که همچین خوب پاسخ داده نشده باز پاسخ بده.
آقای جابر شما شماره واتساپ رو گرفتین؟
بله.
مرسی. باتون تماس میگیرم.
تارا جان میبوسیمت عزیزم. ممنونیم که اومدی. خیلی دوستت داریم. کاش من یه پسر داشتم الان ازت تقاضای ازدواج میکرد. خیلی داشته باشن مگه من فوزی؟
بله.
پسرای ایرج خان که میدونم کوچیکن، نفیس جان و انیس جان. چند سالن ایرج خان؟
جان انیس 12، نفیس 7.
خب یه 2-3 سال
صبر میکنه.
2-3 سال
موقع 39 بالاتر نمیرن.
خیلی صدای زیبایی داشتیم. بسیار زیبا بودید. بسیار عدتون بشم.
آقای جابری میخوان برن افطار کنن، ما دلش
من افطار کردم دیگه خانم. بله. فقط این 2 شماره که فرستادین، یکی که شما فرستادید با تارا جون فرستادن فرق میکنه.
آها من شماره اولم واتساپ نبود. شماره دوم واتساپ است. آره هر 2 شماره 2 تاشون متفاوته.
خیلی ممنون. مرسی. برای خانم مسرور نفرستید.
اینو باشه آقای
چقدر جای آقای ناصر خان خالیه. یعنی شما که صحبت میکنین من جایشون رو خالی میبینم. با ایرج خان که نمیتونید شوخی نمیکنین، یعنی باز با ایرج خان
خواهش میکنم.
آقای کمال آبادی،
خواهش میکنم.
آقای راوی،
آقای کمال آبادی به اون رو نمیده.
نه
آقای کمال آبادی
ایرج خان کاری برای من کرد
چهره نورانیشون همه تو قلب هممونه.
یعنی
قربانش ماست.
ما رادیوی باهایی مصاحبه می‌کردیم و این 7 نفر همه در زندان بودن. من از ایرج خان تقاضا کردم که آیا میشه که با ماما خانم کمال آبادی ما یک مصاحبه داشته باشیم. در طور نخیر مادرشون. مادر فریبا خانم.
بله مادر فریبا.
و جناب کمال آبادی در نهایت محبت اون موقع مامان زندگی میکردن با شورانگیز خانم و ایرج خان و ایشون اومدن و به نظر من زیباترین در عرض 15 سالی که ما برنامه داشتیم زیباترینش مصاحبه با مامان ایشون بود و من هرگز فراموش نمی کنم محبتی که ایشون به ما کردن.
خواهش میکنم، لطف شماست.
خطرناک بود این کار. شایدم البته محفل ملی ما محبت داشتن، چیزی نگفتن، ولی خانم کمال آبادی آمدن و با ما صحبت کردن و چقدر زیبا بود. ایرج خواه هر وقت باشون صحبت میکنین تکبیر منو برسونین.
چشم، حتما. خیلی ممنون، لطف شماست.
خب آقای طاهرزاده شما چرا نمیرین؟
خب اگه اجازه بدید مرخص بشیم از حضورتون.
خیلی خوب شد که آقای جابری اینقدر شیک گفتیم که دیگه ما جرئت نمی‌کنیم ادامه. تارا جان عزیزم هفته دیگه باید 8 شروع کنیم، به خبر میدم قربونت برم عزیزم. و کاش پسر داشتم. فدای تو. ملیه جون خداحافظ.
ایرج مسعود به برنامه‌ها شور و نشور خاصی میدیم، یعنی که حقیقتا عرض میکنم
ای مهری خانم، ای خانم،
باور بفرمایید دیدنتون باعث انرژی میشه. این انرژی که به این کره زمین، به این دهکده کوچک میدید، این باعث میشه که برنامه‌ها هم شیرین و شیرین و شیرین تر بشه.
ممنونم.
خدا حق شاهده.
این از لطف دارین، از لطف خانواده زمانی هم شما رزما خانم ها جناب جابری که اینقدر مظلوم اینجا نشستم فکر می‌کنم ما اینجا فهمیم. شب همگی بخیر.
شب بخیر. انشالله که همگی سلامت باشین. انشالله که فضل الهی شامل همه باشه، همه در دنیا.
انشالله انشالله. ما با جناب مکسول هم خداحافظی میکنیم. تمام شب صورتشون رو به ما بود لبخند میزدن. خدا حافظ.
خدا حافظ. قربان شما.
وقتتون بخیر.
قربان شما.
خدا نگهدار.